Hello and warm greetings. Welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, where we would try to comprehensively analyze 7 articles in 2 different sections, along with the daily mains practice question. In the analysis part, we'll first talk about the debate surrounding the freebies culture in India, especially in the context of electoral politics, the associated challenges, and the way forward. Then, in the second article, we'll talk about the prospects of hydrogen trains, the issues involved, and the way forward. Then we'll refer the mains value addition content for the upcoming mains. Subsequently, we'll also talk about the prelims pointers from a special perspective of the upcoming UPSC 2027 examination. So stay tuned. Coming to the very first topic of today's discussion, this is about freebies, welfare or vote bank politics. In political governance, we have one doctrine known as doctrine of parens patriae, which basically means that the state acts as the guardian of the people, as the guardian of the citizens, and it has an obligation with respect to the overall socio-economic upliftment of the people, especially considering the interests of the marginalized and the vulnerable sections. Now, India is a welfare state, we all know that. Therefore, the state has an obligation with respect to the welfare of the people, minimizing the inequalities, promoting the overall development, socio-economic development. And for that, it comes with the various policies and interventions. For example, let's say to provide educational facilities, for example, to provide the healthcare facilities, for example, to enhance the overall skill and entrepreneurial activity, or let's say in terms of infrastructure development, the research facilities. But what if these welfare interventions have a very short-sighted view? What if these welfare interventions are primarily introduced for electoral gains, for short-term electoral gains? What if these interventions are fiscally imprudent? They are unsustainable in nature. Would we still call them the welfare interventions? That has been a question which has been posed to the Supreme Court many times, because it is really important to distinguish between the subsidies, or let's say the freebies, or let's say the welfare interventions, the genuine interventions by the government. And therefore, especially if you look at what is happening at the state levels, for example, in terms of the state of Tamil Nadu or Punjab or Karnataka, various states are coming up with various interventions. They're announcing various interventions, especially once we have this electoral cycle. And most of these interventions are fiscally imprudent. They are unsustainable in nature. And they have this aspect or the concern with respect to intergenerational equity, because the benefits which the government is promising would be the instant. But what about the servicing of those borrowings? Because that would incur a cost. If the government is saying that we are going to provide you free electricity or free transport, or we are going to provide you the colored televisions or mixers or grinders, that would have a cost, and that the future generation would have to compensate for. So the real question is that does welfare paradigm include these freebies? So what we'll do today is we'll first talk about what these freebies are. We'll talk about what is the difference between, let's say, the subsidies or the freebies and the welfare interventions. We'll also look into the philosophical foundation. Why? Because this topic is also very important from GS4 perspective, ethics and governance. What are the philosophical foundations? We'll talk about the judicial and the other perspectives involved with respect to this particular thing, the constitutional perspective. We'll look at the arguments in support of freebies, arguments against freebies, and we'll go for a comprehensive way forward. Believe me, if any question comes with respect to the freebies, you can easily answer with the help of this particular discussion. Right? So without wasting time, let's continue with the very first topic. Now, the very first thing which I'll have to understand is, if you are starting the answer with respect to this, how would you introduce? Ideally, you should mention the definition of freebies. The definition of the freebies is provided by the Reserve Bank of India, where what it says is that those interventions, those public welfare measures, which are provided at free of cost, those public welfare measures provided free of cost. For example, free electricity, loan waivers, for example, loan waivers of farmers, or free colored television sets, free bicycles, free scooters, unconditional cash transfers. I'm using the word unconditional, without any condition. Those are termed as freebies. And these are welfare measures, no doubt about that. But how would you distinguish these freebies with merit goods? By merit goods kya hota hai? What do we mean by merit goods? See, again, as I've told earlier, the very objective of analysis is to make you understand complex things. So just focus on understanding and the content would automatically come. I've seen many of the students focusing just on content. Bhai, content tab aayega jab aap samjhenge. Once you will focus on understanding part. We have certain merit goods. For example, education. For example, healthcare. For example, let's say the research facilities. You must be aware of the ICAR or ICMR, the scientific laboratories. Or let's talk about the highways, the pipelines. Those are merit goods, which have a long-term benefit. But if these measures are having a very short-sighted objective, a myopic view, then those would not be seen as pure welfare interventions. Those would be seen as the freebies, primarily for electoral gains, short-term electoral gains. Okay. Now, why this distinction is really important? It is important because people in India, they don't have the capacity, or even if they have the capacity, they're not able to differentiate that what the government is doing. Is it really something which is required, or would it have no repercussions in the future? Definitely. If the government is basically saying that we are going to provide free laptops, it would basically incur the revenue expenditure. From where the amount would come, the government would go for more of borrowings. More of borrowings would mean what? Less of capital expenditure. Capital expenditure in terms of more productive sectors. And the later generations would have to bear the interest cost. And we have many of the reports by the World Bank also, including the IMF, which says that most of these developing countries, and please pay attention, very important, most of the developing countries have a good amount of money, which is basically used for interest payments. Now, why we have more of amount or more amount of money going for the interest payments? Because we have taken a lot of loans before. So if you would have taken less of loans, we would have had more amount of money for productive sectors, agriculture, infrastructure development, social capital, human capital. So that is what you'll have to understand. We need to distinguish the difference among all these things. Now, what is the difference between welfare, subsidy and freebies? Welfare, these are the interventions aimed at ensuring minimum standards of living and fulfilling the constitutional obligations. For example, in India's case, we have DPSPs, Directive Principles of State Policy, which basically direct the state to incorporate these principles in the overall policy formulation, in the overall governance, minimize inequalities, protect the weaker sections of the society, reduce concentration of power. Okay? So these are some of the directives which are given. Improve the standards of women, the workers. So it is basically the welfare objective. Next, we have subsidies. What are subsidies? Subsidies are partial financial assistance provided by the government to reduce the cost of essential goods and services. Let's talk about the LPG subsidies, which the government provides. Says that a part of the expenses would be borne by us. You give some part of it, we'll give some part of it. Or the food subsidies, which the government gives, the fertilizer subsidies, got it? The partial funding by the government. Then we have freebies. Goods or services distributed without adequate economic justification. Government is saying that we are going to give 2,000 rupees to every woman in the state. There must be some women who are crorpatis. Do they really need 2,000 rupees? Definitely they would be in the queue. They would come and they would get the money. Many of them would definitely do so. But the point is, do we have a rational objective? Do we have a reason at the basis with respect to providing these goods and services? The answer is no. And it is primarily, you must have seen, whenever you have this electoral seasons, different political parties, they compete with each other, that who is going to provide more of these interventions, more of these facilities, free public transport, free laptops, free bicycles, free scooters. In many cases, they also have positive, result implications. But the point is, do we have a rational basis? Is there a reason involved? The answer is no. Without clear targeting, there is no aspect of targeted beneficiaries. It is mostly unconditional, universal. Got it? Now, what are the philosophical foundations? Why this is important, especially if you're writing the answer with respect to ethics? Definitely try to mention these philosophical foundations. We have the very first foundation, which is important and which is basically the welfare state perspective. India is a welfare state, which says that we need to focus on the welfare of the people, especially those who are at the last in the socio-economic strata, the marginalized or the vulnerable. And therefore, we have the directives which are given to the state. So it is constitutionally desirable. It is constitutionally desirable in a welfare state. That is a perspective which we have. Next, we have libertarian perspective. We have had scholars like Hayek. See, libertarian perspective would always say that minimize the state. State intervention should be minimum. If the state is intervening again and again, saying that we are intervening for the welfare of the people, then that would disincentivize the individual skills, or that would disincentivize the individual entrepreneurial activity. It would basically act as a hamper, because what libertarians say, that whatever money is being earned, whatever taxes are being imposed by the state, most of the taxes are being contributed by those people who are having that entrepreneurial capacity or who are working really hard. And that money is being used for the welfare of the people who are quite lazy. This is what libertarians say. So they talk about minimizing the government interventions, because it ultimately does not benefit those who are willing to put a lot of efforts in the economy, who have that entrepreneurial activity or who have that entrepreneurial skills. Got it? Next, we have egalitarian perspective. For example, we have John Rawls. John Rawls says, what Rawls says is that we can have differences in the societies, we can have inequalities in the societies, as long as the least advantaged person in the society is protected. So the least advantage must be protected. For that, he talks about redistribution. That's the very basis of Rawls' philosophy, that there has to be redistributive justice in the society. Okay? But it should make sure inequalities can exist, but it should make sure that the least advantaged person in the society is protected. Then we have the capability approach by Amartya Sen, one of the most important approaches. Now, what he basically does is he shifts the discourse. He shifts the discourse from income support to that of capability approach. What he says is that let's not focus on providing the income support to the people. No. Let's focus on giving them the capability, infusing them with the capabilities. For example, education. For example, health. He gives the example, he says that if you are giving a laptop to a person who does not know how to operate a laptop, or does not have a basic minimum literacy with respect to operating a laptop, would it make sense? So rather than giving the laptop to the person, first give the capacity or the capability with respect to knowing how a laptop operates, how a computer operates. So he shifts the discourse from income to that of the capability approach. So ye bas yaad rakhiye, maybe you can put this in the answers itself. What are the constitutional perspectives involved? We have, for example, Article 38, which talks about that the state should intervene in order to minimize the inequalities. We have Article 39, which talks about the livelihoods, which talks about that the state should make sure that there is equitable distribution of resources, prevention of concentration of wealth. We have then Article 41, which talks about that the state basically needs to protect the people, or give the special interventions for the weaker sections in terms of the old age, in weaker circumstances, the old age or unemployment or sickness. Then we have 43, which basically talks about the welfare of the workers, the working conditions. Then we have Article 46, which talks about the protection or the promotion of the educational and economic interests of the weaker sections in terms of SCs, STs. So these are, in one way or the other, they basically direct the state to go for welfare interventions. Ye constitutional perspectives hain. Now, what has been the judicial perspective? One of the most important cases with respect to getting to the fact that whether freebies are justified or not has been the Subramaniam Balaji versus State of Tamil Nadu. Now, in this particular case, the petitioner argued that the distribution of colored television sets or mixers or grinders, it is basically a corrupt practice under the Representation of People's Act, Section 123. And what the Supreme Court said was that this is a kind of a welfare promise which is being delivered by one political party, that if it comes to power, it would basically provide all those things. So it is a kind of a welfare intervention. So in this particular case, the Supreme Court very categorically said that this does not amount to corrupt practices. And many of the time this has been misinterpreted. It has been misinterpreted in a way that people say that in Subramaniam Balaji, the Supreme Court has in one way or the other encouraged freebies. The answer is no, not at all. What it said was that in Indian scenario, we'll have to make sure that we have adequate welfare interventions in place. And then also we have the Supreme Court. It has expressed the concerns with respect to the growing trend of the competitive populism. It has said that many of the parties, they're not competing among each other, that who can provide more of these interventions. And it very clearly directed to the Election Commission of India to frame guidelines that if a political party is basically promising in its manifesto that we are going to provide the scooters or the bicycles or this, what is going to be the funding source? What is the rationale? What is the reason that the political party is promising this particular thing to the voters? And what is going to be the debt sustainability? What is going to be the fiscal aspect? Because the government definitely would have to borrow money. So it directed the Election Commission, and Election Commission later, it amended the Model Code of Conduct. But what you'll have to understand is that the implementation remains weak. First of all, Model Code of Conduct is something which does not have a statutory backing. And different political parties, through various means, they try to justify. Many of the times, the political parties don't give a reason that why they are coming up with these promises. So the implementation remains weak. But what you'll have to understand is that in this particular case, Supreme Court did not promote the idea of freebies. Got it? Then the latest case is with respect to Tamil Nadu Power Distribution Corporation Limited versus Union of India. In this particular case, Supreme Court very clearly said that if different state governments are coming up with various announcements and saying that we are going to provide free electricity or loan waivers or something, it would disincentivize work and earning with dignity and self-respect. There are many people, you must be aware, there are many people who are unemployed, who don't have adequate employment opportunities, who are not working, but still very active on Instagram, coming up with reels and all these things. So what the Supreme Court said in this particular case is that those people who are already unemployed, who do not have any kind of productive livelihood opportunity, they would not seek or they would not want to have any kind of employment because they would be consistently dependent on the income support provided by the government. And that would hamper the innovation in an economy. That would hamper the individual entrepreneurial ability. Okay. Next, it could undermine the fiscal discipline and economic stability. Why? Because this thing would be like, it would continue forever. There would not be any stop to it because people would now be more inclined for voting for that political party which promises more of these interventions, rather for a political party which goes for the politics of development. Got it? Now, why have freebies become so common? See, the very first is competitive electoral politics. In 1980s and 1990s, what we saw in Tamil Nadu, especially in the state of Tamil Nadu, was the growth of such interventions. Political parties, different political parties, they came up with various interventions. That if we come to power, we are going to provide free meals. If we come to power, we are going to provide free bicycles. And that basically made the other states, other political parties in various states to have this particular notion. And therefore, it in a way, it has proliferated into various dimensions, especially those states of Karnataka, in Punjab and the other states. Tamil Nadu during the late 20th century. And various political parties, if one political party would say that we would basically go for A amount of things, the other would say we'll go for A plus amount of things. The other political party would say we'll go for A plus plus amount of things. So there is a kind of competition among the political parties, right? Next is weak employment growth. See, what you'll have to understand is that India has witnessed a kind of a jobless growth. We have basically transitioned directly from the agriculture to the services sector. We have not given enough of importance to the manufacturing sector. And manufacturing sector is the one which is one of the big providers of employment opportunities in any of the economy. And many of the people in India are unemployed. And what we face is the aspect of or the problem of structural unemployment. Now what happens is, as I told you before, that when people are unemployed, they are dependent on the income support by the government. And once the people are dependent on the income support, they do not want the government to stop that. If the government would stop, definitely it would have to bear the repercussions in the elections. So the government says, no, we'll not do. It comes with the unemployment allowances, the income support to the unemployed. And people are really happy. People are happy with respect to that. Got it? Next, we have rising economic inequality. According to the World Inequality Report of 2022, what the report says is that the top 10% of Indians, they have a share of almost 57% of the national wealth. And the bottom 10% have just 13%. Means that there is pervasive inequality in the society, pervasive economic inequality. And this basically makes that poor section of the society or lower income category society to basically ask or seek more of favors from the government. And therefore the government do as what the people say, because it's the populism which matters. Majority of the people, what they really want, that is what the government would do. Why would it consider the fiscal aspect or the prudent aspect or the sustainability aspect? No, it has to win the elections. Let the future generation carry the burden. So that is what you'll have to understand. Then we have electoral incentives. The thing is, with respect to long-term welfare interventions, this is very important to understand. The issue with the long-term interventions is that if I'm saying that we would invest, if a government would invest in education or health, the result would come after a decade or so. Or if we are going to construct a highway or infrastructure projects. But if the government says that we are going to provide the scooters or we are going to provide the free laptops or the bicycles, the benefit is instant, immediate gratification. And that is what the people want. Immediate gratification. We'll also talk about this particular thing, which the economic survey has talked about. And therefore, this topic also becomes very important for those students who are going to write mains this year. Okay? Then weak fiscal transparency. In India, we don't have any institution, any independent institution to evaluate that if a political party A is promising that we are going to provide loan waivers to the tune of lakhs of crores, what is going to be the fiscal basis of it? Who is going to bear the burden of it? And from where the money is going to come? There is no independent institution. We have in countries like Australia and Netherlands, we have independent institutions. Whenever different political parties are fighting elections and if they come up with any of the promise in their manifestos, we have these institutions coming up with a report that party A has said this, and party A, if it is saying that this is something which is impractical because the party A does not have adequate resources, or if party A comes and forms a government, it would not have enough of resources. And this would be the implication. But we don't have any of those institutions. Got it? Now, what are the economic arguments supporting freebies? See, you need to have both the perspective. The very first is poverty alleviation. See, we have still in the country, we have a lot many cases of multi-dimensional poverty. See, absolute poverty may have reduced in India. Definitely, we have worked on that. But with respect to multi-dimensional poverty, we still have a good number of people who are below that particular line. And therefore, cash transfers and food support to that particular section, that definitely basically provides that cushion or that buffer. For example, to the times of COVID-19, the government came up with the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, the food entitlements free of cost, and that to a great extent provided or protected the nutritional aspect. Got it? Then we have human capital formation. We have various schemes. For example, the provision of free bicycles or free laptops, which have been given even in the state of UP. So this, in one way or the other, definitely has improved the educational outcomes. Initially, in the state of Tamil Nadu, the government came up with the noon meal scheme, which later served as a very basis of midday meal program by the government of India. Okay. Next, we have women's empowerment. See, in states like Karnataka or in Delhi also, you must have seen that we have free provisions, free transport facilities for women, especially for their workforce. So what it does is that it reduces the mobility constraints and it allows women to go for more of the employment opportunities. It increases the overall participation in the workforce with respect to the women especially. And it also gives them more of decision-making power. Once the women are financially independent, or once they have good resources of their own, financial resources of their own, they tend to invest more in the educational and the health aspect of the children. So it has the overall productivity. It has an effect on the overall human development indicators. Got it? Labor force participation, better human development indicators. Correcting the market failures. देखो एक चीज बहुत important है. One thing is very important. that education, health facilities, skill formation, these are merit goods, and the market does not provide them much. Private players, they're not really inclined to do what the government is doing. They would rather focus on the profit motive. And therefore, government intervention is indispensable. Government has to come up with all these things. Now you would say, sir, whether giving laptops is also an educational aspect? Yes, it can be. If you have, let's say, out of 10, if you have, let's say, 5 people, there are 10 students out of these 10, let's say there are 5 students who have adequate knowledge of the computers. So if the government is giving them the laptop, definitely it's going to improve the overall outcomes. Why not? Okay. Next we have markets tend to underprovide the merit goods. All right. Demand stimulation. Now, whenever we have had the times of crisis, economic slowdown, the government expenses, the government expenditure has definitely resulted into more of consumption. And whenever there is more of consumption, it gives, in one way or the other, it gives a boost to the overall GDP, gross domestic product. And it is also, we have, for example, the income transfers during the times of crisis. We have Keynesian economics supporting this. What Keynesian economics says, that whenever we have the times of recession, government should spend more in order to boost the consumption and the overall productivity. Then we have reduction in the inequality. Whenever the government comes up with the redistributive spending, it in one way or the other, redistributive spending matlab kya? That it imposes the tax, especially on those who are rich, and then it redistributes the benefits to the least advantageous, the least advantaged in the society. And that is what the redistributive justice is all about. And that basically propels, or it spurs the inclusive growth. Okay? IMF study has also said that. What IMF study has said, that whenever the government is coming up with a targeted social development program, it in one way or the other, it has a long-term sustainability. It has a long-term growth story attached with it. Got it? Now, what are the arguments against freebies? In this year's economic survey, and that's the reason I said that this topic is very important, the economic survey says that there has been almost 1.7 lakh crores unconditional cash transfers by various states in the financial year 25-26. Can you imagine? Unconditional cash transfers, no conditions attached. 1.7 lakh crores in the financial year 25-26. The economic survey has talked about a concept. In the preface to the economic survey, we have the chief economic advisor, V. Anantha Nageshwaran. He has basically talked about this particular thing. He came up with the Katha Upanishad, and over there what he talked about is 2 things. We have Shreya and Priya. Shreya, the enduring good, and Priya, the fleeting comfort. So what he says is, through the particular verses of the Katha Upanishad, Yama's message in Katha Upanishad is timeless. Every moment asks us to choose between Shreya, the enduring good, the long-term benefits, and Priya, the fleeting comfort, that is the instant gratification. The mature mind chooses Shreya. The immature mind settles for Priya. In other words, the country stands to gain immensely when all of us embrace delayed gratification. So more of investments, what Shreya would say, more of investments in the infrastructure, in the health, in the skill development, entrepreneurial development, in the research facilities. What Priya would say, more of investments through the electricity, free electricity, loan waivers, free laptops, free grinders, free scooters, free bicycles. So this would be the instant gratification. And that's the reason this topic becomes very, very important. And the number of states since 2022 and 23, it has increased by 5 times. Those states who are providing all these unconditional cash transfers. And half of these states are going to have revenue deficit. Means what? That ultimately this is going to be the revenue expenditure, and the states are going to have revenue deficit. Therefore, they would go for more of borrowing. And that is where what the RBI says, that the borrowing by the states is unsustainable. It's not rational, because they are borrowing for those things. See, if they would have borrowed for those things which are of productive nature, definitely it would have been a good step. But now they are borrowing for unproductive assets. In fact, they're not even assets, unproductive areas. Got it? Then we have revenue expenditure crowds out capital expenditure. It is but obvious. If you have 100 rupees, and out of 100 rupees, let's say you are spending now 40 rupees on the revenue expenditure. including all these expenses, the freebies and the other recurring expenses. Now, you're left with 60 rupees for the capital expenditure in terms of the highways, expressways, whatever. Let's say the 40 increases to 50 now. So you'll have less amount remaining for the capital expenditure. That would have less of productive outcomes for the future. Simple as that. So ये चीज़ है. Infrastructure, research facilities, recurring transfers, and therefore what about the capital expenditure? Debt sustainability. Many states, they have the debt burden of the states. It's almost to the tune of 30 to 40% of gross state domestic product. And this calls for unsustainable borrowing. They go for mindless borrowing. And what is the result? What the Finance Commission says, that states are not really focusing on basically the fiscal prudence. They're not focusing upon the budget management. They're going for those unsustainable practices, unsustainable borrowings, which the future generation would have to bear. Got it? Then we have moral hazard. What is moral hazard? Let's say we have some people who have taken the loans, agricultural loans, some farmers. Now, they, in a particular financial year, they were given loan waivers. Elections are approaching, and then the government says that we waive off the loans of these farmers. Now again, many farmers take the loan. Election cycle is again repeating. They would be having an anticipation, these farmers, that let's wait, do not repay the debt. They would have a kind of a consensus among themselves, and then they would say that let's wait and see if the government is basically waiving off the debts. So it would reduce the inclination of the people to go for these banking practices. They would not be really inclined to repay or pay off their debts. And that leads to moral hazards. It leads to weak credit culture, weak repayment discipline. Then we have dependency syndromes. For example, as I told you, the example of the youths which I gave you. These unconditional cash transfers can reduce the incentives to seek employment. अरे भाई क्या ज़रूरत है? What is the need? Instagram पे रील चल रही है. Jio has already provided the internet. Plus income support is coming. Plus Bapuji has a lot of agricultural land. So nothing required. They would not even think about going for a job. Got it? So these are the issues. Labor market, and that too in such a scenario where the market really needs skilled people. There is a technological transition which we are witnessing. More of people with technological knowledge, with technological know-how, they're needed. And during these times, we have more of people who are not really inclined to join the workforce. Then environmental costs. If we have free electricity, what it would result to is excessive groundwater extraction. What is happening in Punjab and Haryana? Aquifers are destroyed. And that is also leading to various diseases because the concentration of the heavy metals in the water is increasing. Arsenic or cadmium or other heavy metals. Then we have weakening the public institutions. We have the DISCOMs, distribution companies, power distribution companies. Free electricity is being announced by the government. Who will have to bear the brunt? The DISCOMs. Government says that we would compensate, but when? No one knows. Let's talk about the banks. What the government says, that waive off the loans of these farmers. Banks would say that who would give us back the money? Government says that we would give, but wait for some time. Then we have the other institutions, for example, Transport Corporation. Arey bhai, ultimately these institutions are suffering. And once these institutions would suffer, how would they focus on, if they would not have enough of the fiscal room or the amount with themselves, how would they focus on productivity? Then we complain that see the buses of the Transport Corporation, they're so bad, or we are not getting electricity on time, or let's say the bank facilities are so bad. Because they don't have, again, they are burdened, right? Then let's talk about, and the CAG reports has consistently flagged this particular issue. The CAG reports have said that because of all this, what is happening is that these institutions are being compromised. They don't have the adequate finances with them. Then distorts the electoral discourse. For example, if any party comes and says that we are going to talk about the developmental aspects, would anyone be really concerned? No, because people are more really interested in caste politics and religious politics. We all know what has happened because of that. So the point is, developmental politics take a backseat, and these politics, these short-term aspects, they come at the forefront. Got it? Now, what should be the way forward? The solution is not to abolish welfare, but to redesign it intelligently. We are not saying that abolish the welfare aspects, but at least redesign it. Make it financially more sustainable, more rational. Clearly define freebies. We need to distinguish merit goods with social protection, and subsidies and electoral freebies. Sorry for this misprint. It's electoral freebies. We need to have a clear differentiation. And how would we differentiate? On the basis of the outcomes. Ki bhai, if the government is coming and saying that we are going for welfare interventions, what outcome it is having? What socio-economic outcome it is having? That should be the basis to decide whether freebies, whether they are freebies or whether they are genuine welfare interventions. Then we have mandatory fiscal costing of the election manifestos. Political parties should disclose that if they're coming up with a promise, what would be the funding source? What would be the debt implications? From where the sources are going to come? And is it a scheme which would continue forever, or would it have a sunset clause? Would it stop? They need to disclose it. Then we have established an independent fiscal council. Very, very important. Fiscal council, so as to evaluate the fiscal sustainability. If the government is planning up to come up with any intervention, is it fiscally sustainable? Next aspect is the election promises. What all election promises the parties are doing, the independent fiscal council should evaluate it on the basis of rational parameters. Okay? Then we have shift towards conditional cash transfers. Conditional. But if a family wants income support, definitely it would get the income support of 4,000 or 5,000 rupees. But the point is, it should make sure that the children in the family must have a school enrollment. They must be vaccinated, for example. So it should be conditional. Got it? School attendance, immunization, nutritional outcomes of the children, improve targeting. Why not we gradually switch to DBTs? And this is again an advantage which India has. We have a very robust digital public interface with respect to infrastructure, with respect to Aadhaar, UPI, JAM Trinity, what we call as. So why not fix to DBT? That would basically also plug the leakages which we have. Got it? Then we have the prioritizing the capital expenditure. Why not we prioritize rather than all these expenditure? Let's prioritize the capital expenditure in terms of the highways creation, the roadways, the infrastructure, social infrastructure. Got it? Then we have introduced the sunset clause. Whenever the government is even coming up with these policies, it should define that what is going to be the period of this particular scheme. Whether it would continue endlessly or whether it would stop after a few years. And there has to be a timely review of this particular initiative, independent evaluation. Strengthen outcome budgeting, very, very important. Let's not judge a particular budget or a particular scheme on the basis of that how much money the government is planning to invest. No. Rather, what is going to be the outcome? What is going to be the outcome with respect to the overall socio-economic parameters or the human development indicators of the people? Got it? Build public awareness. People need to be told that come out of this caste and religious and freebies politics. Every rupee spent on unsustainable subsidies represents an opportunity cost which you will have to bear. People need to be told that. Got it? Because if the government is saying that we are going to give you the grinders, so that is in one way or the other also going to bear an opportunity cost. And you will have to bear that particular cost. Government is not going to do anything. It would come and go. Ultimately, the people would have to bear the brunt. Now, what are the international experiences? And this has been talked about by the economic survey itself. We have in Brazil, Bolsa Familia. Over there, we have this particular cash transfer scheme. And this is one of the most successful ones. But it is conditional cash transfers. On the basis of the education of the children, on the basis of the school attendance, on the basis of the nutritional outcome of the children, and therefore it has been one of the very most successful interventions as far as socio-economic aspect is concerned. Then we have in Mexico Progresa, later Opportunity Days or Prospera. So what it says is, again, cash transfers are linked to school attendance, nutrition, healthcare. Both these examples are cited in the economic survey this year. So therefore, they're very important. These are conditional cash transfers. As any that anyone would get it. The person who showcases improvement on certain parameters would be entitled to the benefits. Then we have in Nordic countries, for example, Sweden, Norway, Denmark. What they provide is free education, social security. Why? Because they have a very good tax base. Why not we come up with tax reforms in India? We already know that how many people are really giving the income tax or filing the income returns. We have many of the states, big, these retailers, wholesale dealers who are crore patis. And then they are not paying any tax to the government. So there has to be a tax reform first, so that the government gets a good amount of fund, and then that funding can be used for overall socio-economic development, not considered fiscally irresponsible. So they are going for free education, social security. But again, it is not fiscally irresponsible. They're going for responsible means because they have a good tax base. See, please understand, someone said it very beautifully, that the measure of the governance, that the measure of the good governance is not how many people are dependent on the government. The measure of good governance is not how many people are dependent on the government, rather how many people do not need government supports. Got it? So we need to judge the government on the basis of the fact that how many people are independent. And that would only happen when the government would focus on long-term sustainability. Because if we really have to achieve the objective of sustainable development goals and the idea of Viksit Bharat, then we'll have to prioritize long-term developmental opportunities, not the short-term. Because ultimately, the future generation would have to bear the brunt. The intergenerational equity would be compromised. Got it? Let's have a means practice question. Again, this is a 15 marker. Very, very important. The Economic Survey 25-26 invokes the concept of Shreya and Priya in critique of the expanding culture of unconditional transfers. Critically analyze. It says critically analyze, so you will have to talk about the pros and the cons, and you'll also have to give the way forward in the context of India's welfare policies. It's a 15 marker, so do write adequately. Very important aspect. And as if you're writing the answer as ancillary value additions, you can talk about various aspects, the constitutional perspective or the philosophical perspective. That would definitely convince the examiner that you know more of this particular topic, and then definitely you'd have an added advantage. So do write an answer, because that is the only way to have a good base in the mains answer writing, to perform good as far as mains is concerned. And yes, if you're liking the initiative, do not forget to press the like button and also let us know in the comments. Let's go to the next topic. To come to the next topic, this is about the hydrogen trains, challenges and prospects. So on July 17th, Prime Minister will basically flag off India's first hydrogen train. India's first hydrogen power train in Jind, Haryana on July 17th. This will mark a major milestone for the Indian Railways in a green technology where very few countries have the expertise. Why is this important? Also from the prelims perspective, because this can be asked in the prelims. According to the Railways, this is one of the longest 8 passenger cars and 2 driving power cars and most powerful 2,400 kilowatt hydrogen train sets. The train can carry at least 682 passengers on the 89-kilometer Jind-Sonipat railway section at a maximum speed of 75 kilometers per hour. It will make 2 round trips a day, covering 356 kilometers and consuming an estimated 300 kg of hydrogen. Again, a very good news and a very important feat for a country like India. See, we are a developing countries, and most of the developed countries, they are not acting as responsibly as India is doing with respect to coming up with more of the alternative energy sources, especially the renewable capacity additions. So again, this is a very important thing, and hydrogen trains represent a convergence of clean mobility, energy security and industrial self-reliance. The article does not talk about the way forward, but we'll also have a discussion with respect to what should be the way forward. Most of these points can be used. Now, this is the application of hydrogen energy with respect to the trains. But let's say if a question comes with respect to the other buses, for example, you can also write the similar challenges and the way forward. Very important part of GS3 Science and Tech. Now, how does a hydrogen train works? Unlike a conventional electric trains, which rely on the electricity from the overhead wires, the hydrogen trains generate electricity on board. So they generate electricity with the help of the hydrogen, which is stored in the tanks. And then we have the incorporation or the addition of the oxygen from the air. And this goes into the fuel cell. And then we have the production of the electricity. And then that electricity basically moves the electric motors. And then you have the train movement. Now, this is considered as a zero tailpipe emissions. Why? Because the byproducts are just the water and energy. So this is a very clean source of energy. Got it? The water and energy. Power architecture of India's hydrogen train. Now, each of the 2 power cards contain 4 integrated power packs. Each power pack consists of hydrogen fuel cell providing almost 115 kilowatt power and lithium ferrophosphate battery providing almost 185 kilowatt. 185 kilowatt. Now, the question is that why do we have, in total we have 300. And then you have total 8 power packs, 4 in each. So if you multiply this by 8, We have total power as 2400 kilowatt. But the question is that in this particular train, we understand that we have hydrogen fuel cell. Why do we have lithium ferrophosphate battery? See, whenever the train starts, it need that acceleration. It need more of power. So only if the train is only having the fuel cell, that won't be sufficient. So you need more of additional power source. Got it? Now, once the train is cruising at a constant speed, it does not need the battery. Rather, only hydrogen fuel cell can work. Once the train is stopping at the station, it would basically generate the excess of the energy would basically be supplied to the battery, and the battery would be recharged. That is the whole phenomena. A fuel cell provides constant power, whereas a train's power demand is highly variable. Now, why hydrogen trains are technologically challenging? The very first is the storage. See, hydrogen is stored at great pressures, and this is not something which is very easy. That is also quite risky, right? Hydrogen it has a very low volumetric energy density. So it needs to be compressed to a great degree if you really want to store more of hydrogen, right? But this has challenges because high pressure storage requires special composite cylinders, advanced safety systems with respect to the usage of hydrogen, because it's quite inflammable, right? Hydrogen transportation, it is highly flammable and requires specialized tankers. So what we are trying to say is that this is not something which is like a normal gas cylinder. You need specialized containers. You need specialized pipelines. Got it? Refueling infrastructure. What it says is that Indian Railway is now basically saying that we have a 3000 kg hydrogen refueling facility at Jind for this particular train. What about the scale? Right now you are having for one particular train. How would you scale it if you need to have more of trains? Because coming up with more of the refueling facilities is not something which is quite easy. It's very technologically intensive process. As I said, it's not just like a LPG cylinder. It has to be stored in a very safe manner. Otherwise, it can lead to a lot of crisis, explosions and other things. Cryogenic cooling during the dispensing. We need the chiller plant cools hydrogen to almost minus 15 degrees Celsius before dispensing hydrogen. So point is, if you need such facilities, cryogenic cooling for dispensing, you need again technologies in place, refrigeration technologies in place, cryogenic technologies in place. Again, not something which is quite economical. It is capital intensive. It would require a lot of money, right? Then we have hydrogen production. What is going to be the source? Are you going for green hydrogen, or you're going for the production of hydrogen from fossil fuels? So that is also a concern, because production of green hydrogen in itself is very technological intensive. So the whole process is very technological and capital intensive, right? Then we have the issue of imported technology. What is it the indigenized technology, or is it an imported technology? It's an imported technology, the fuel cell system. It's from Ballard, Canada. So again, we are still dependent on the technological aspect. Now, what should be the way forward? We need to scale up the green hydrogen production. That is the low-cost green hydrogen. We already have the National Green Hydrogen Mission. We need to incentivize more of the production of green hydrogen. Indigenize the critical technologies with respect to the electrolyzers, the fuel cell, the composite cylinders, the storage cylinders, the pipelines. Got it? Develop hydrogen infrastructure, establish a network of refueling stations. So this is right now what we are having, a 3000 kg plant. It is only going to serve the needs of this particular train. So we need to have a decentralized network with respect to the refueling facilities, safe transportation corridors, and those pipelines which would provide the hydrogen to these refueling centers. Got it? Strengthen the safety and regulatory framework. We need to have more of robust standards. We still don't have adequate standards in place, so we'll have to come up with the robust standards, storage and transportation, for example. Then we have fire safety, emergency response. If any mishap happens, or if any incident occurs, what is going to be the response mechanism? Then periodic inspection and certification, very, very important, because in many of the cases, the pipelines corrode and there is a chance of leakage. So that has to be taken into consideration. Invest in research and innovation. We need to support through research and development through various institutions, IITs, CSIR, laboratories, BHEL, and private industry. There has to be the adequate focus of the adequate involvement of the private industry also. Got it? With respect to enhancing the efficiency of fuel cell, lightweight material batteries, lightweight material cylinders, so that we can have more of efficiency with respect to the train, the movement of the train, less of burden on the train itself. Battery integration, how we would have the dynamic integration of the battery. so that it can adapt to the fluctuations in the production of the electricity. Then we have leakage detection systems, build skilled human resources with respect to how to basically handle the hydrogen or how to operate. We need to have more of these supervisors, more of these technicians who must have adequate knowledge with respect to handling the hydrogen at great pressures. Got it? Safety protocols, emergency response. We have seen that in many of the cases we have had accidents because of the poor training, poor follow-up of the protocols which are there. Got it? Protocols with respect to the industry. Integrate with India's net zero and energy security goals. So we have set the goals for ourselves. Why not integrate this particular aspect in a very broader manner, right? For example, the National Green Hydrogen Mission, National Rail Plan, which basically talks a lot about making sure or decarbonizing the rail itself. Got it? Then net zero by 2070. So again, a very, very important step, a very, very important achievement, I would say, as far as Indian Railways is concerned, because in fact, even very few developed countries have achieved this particular feat. But again, if we really need to scale this up, see, this is not just a pilot project. We should not just see or look this as a pilot project. Rather, we need to scale it commercially. And for that, we'll have to significantly invest in various domains. Got it? Let's have a very small 10-marker question. Please try to attempt it. Hydrogen trains have the potential to transform rail transport in India. Now, there can be a question which says hydrogen buses. NTPC has come up with hydrogen bus. So you'll have to write the same challenges and way forward. Examine their advantages and challenges associated with their development and also give a way forward. Okay? Do right, because again, very, very important. 10 marks, 150 words. Let's go to the mains value addition section. Now, coming to the mains value addition part, we have the very first topic which talks about the study done by Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology. Now, what this says is that almost 25% of the monsoon rainfall over the Western Ghats, it evaporates before reaching the ground. Now, what you'll have to understand is that we have the monsoon, and the prediction of the monsoon is a very complex process. It is dependent on multiple factors, and for years it has been a quite a difficult puzzle for various agencies to come to the conclusion to decide which are the major factors, or how to basically project, or how to basically have this kind of prophecy with respect to that what is going to be the monsoon. Now, in this particular analysis, they have gone with a stable isotope analysis. You need not to go into the detail what this particular method is all about, but on the basis of it, they were able to know that almost 1/4 of the rainfall which falls from the atmosphere, it again basically it fails to reaches the ground and it again evaporates to the tune of almost 4 to 61%. Now, what it does is it gives a cooling effect on the ground, and it further enhances the convection, right? So it further enhances the convection and the rainfall, which the study has said. Therefore, it has two components. One, that we now have a stable method. We have a stable method, that is the stable isotope analysis, through which we can have more of the projections of the monsoon, better analysis and the projections of the monsoon. And second, that because of this activity in the Western Ghat, what basically happens is that it gives a cooling effect on the ground. Almost 25% of the rains, it again evaporates back. So it gives a cooling effect, and it also leads to more of convection, right? The findings will improve the accuracy of weather forecasting, monsoon prediction, and climate models, enhance understanding of regional rainfall variability. We have some parts of the country receiving more rainfall, Northeast, for example, and some less rainfall. What are the factors? On this particular stable isotope method, we can analyze that. And aid disaster preparedness and water resource planning. It also paves the way for nationwide rainfall isotope observation network. So right now we are having the projection on the basis of some other conventional factors, for example, the winds, the direction. But if we basically have this particular method, it is more technologically intensive, and it would give us better result. That is rainfall isotope observation network. Got it? Now, the next topic deals with the comments of the Chief Justice of India with respect to the usage of artificial intelligence in the judiciary. Chief Justice of India Suryakant clarified that artificial intelligence should remain an assistant, not a judge. AI may be used for procedural tasks we need not to have complete dependency on the AI. Rather, we need to use it for our own advantage, for making things better, for improving the efficiency, but not as the very basis of our works. For triaging means what? For prioritizing which case is really important, organizing evidence, legal research, and drafting translations. But judicial decision making must remain exclusively human. The caution follows a recent Supreme Court case where a tribunal relied on AI hallucinated judgments, prompting the court to adopt a zero tolerance approach towards blind reliance on AI in adjudication. So this can also be used in ethics. If you're writing an answer with respect to AI, the uses of AI, you can talk about this particular case study where the CGI has talked about this, that the tribunals or the quasi-judicial bodies or the judiciary should not be completely dependent on the AI for delivering their verdicts. Rather, it should only be used for enhancing the efficiency or helping or doing things easy as far as monotonous tasks are concerned. Importance: the episode highlights the need for responsible AI, human oversight, judicial accountability, and ethical safeguards, ensuring that technology enhances access to justice and efficiency without compromising the fairness, due process, and judicial independence. Got it? Let's go to the prelims pointer section. Coming to the prelims pointer section, we have the very first topic which deals with the food regulator, that is the FSSAI. FSSAI has pulled up the Instamart for supply of rotten foods. Food regulator FSSAI on Saturday said that it has issued 9 notices to quick commerce platform Swiggy Instamart following several consumer complaints, including of alleged supply of rotten and expired food products against the platform. The regulator has directed the platform to submit a detailed explanation, compliance report, failing which appropriate legal action would be initiated. What FSSAI is all about? FSSAI stands for Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. Earlier, food safety and standards in India were regulated by multiple acts and orders under various ministries and departments, such as Prevention of Food Adulteration Act of 54, Fruit Products Order of 55, and Meat Food Products Order of 73, and several others. They were all basically accumulated, and we had in 2006 the government coming up with the Food Safety and Standards Act of 2006, and the ministry under which this particular body works is basically the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. What are the functions? It includes setting the standards, granting the licenses, managing the risk. Even if you go to a street vendor selling a food items, you would see the FSSAI certificate over there, right? Because that is mandatory. Accrediting labs and promoting consumer awareness as outlined in section 16 of the FSS Act of 2006. It regulates and monitors the manufacture, processing, sale, and import of food to ensure safety and quality. For example, we've had many instances of food poisoning, so that we do not have these instances, these things. Therefore, we have this particular body maintaining a constant oversight. Regulation and licensing. FSSAI formulates the rules and regulation for food safety, sets standards for food articles, and establishes limits for additives, contaminants, pesticides, residues, and antibiotics. FSSAI issues a 14-digit license number. You must have seen, whenever you go to a hotel or a restaurant or anything, just observe over there that this is a license which is there at the very front itself, the number, to compliant food businesses operators, ensuring quality assurance for the consumers. Quality control and risk management to maintain food quality. FSSAI monitors contaminants, prevents adulteration, identifies emerging risks in the food market. Then it also employs the surveys and risk analysis, scientific advice and policy support, provides the scientific and technical advice to governments for policy making, lab accreditation and oversight, accredits the laboratories and certification bodies, establishes the procedures for sampling and analysis, consumer awareness and labeling, promotes consumer awareness of food safety and hygiene while setting the standards for food labeling, including nutrition and health claims. Then we have training, education, and public engagement, conducts training programs for food businesses and stakeholders, enhances compliance with food safety norms. Audits and emergency management. The audits are carried out in order to ensure adherence to food safety guidelines. Additionally, FSSAI develops crisis management plans to address the emergencies related to food safety. What is the structure? It operates under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, comprehensive governance and operational framework aimed at ensuring the food safety. Composition of the Food Authority as per Section 5 of the Act. comprises a chairperson and 22 members, so it's a multi-member body, with 1/3 being women. Ex-officio members, 7 joint secretaries from key ministries: agriculture, commerce, consumer affairs, food processing and health, legislative affairs, small-scale industries. Industry representatives, 2 from the food industry and 1 from small-scale industries. Consumer organization, 2 representatives. Eminent experts, 3 food technologists, scientists. State UT representative, 5 members, rotated every 3 years, so that all states and UTs get adequate opportunity. Farmers organizations, 2 representatives. Retailers organization, 1 representative. So it has a kind of a very diverse structure, right? Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, we have the Interpol. It basically has issued red corner notice against Hizbul terrorists. The J&K Police, Jammu Kashmir Police Special Cell State Investigation Agency on Saturday secured an Interpol red corner notice, International Police Organization red corner notice against designated Hizbul Mujahideen terrorists. Now let's talk about the Interpol first. It's the world's largest international police organization that promotes cooperation among various law enforcement agencies around the world to combat international crime and improve global security. Founded in 1923 in Vienna, Austria, headquarters are in Lyon, France. Remember this. Full form is International Criminal Police Organization. Helps member countries fight international and transnational crimes, those crimes which have ramifications across the borders. Facilitates sharing of criminal information among the police agencies. Has nearly 200 member countries. India became member in 1949. Issues different types of notices such as red notice, blue notice, yellow notice, silver notice. Works against crimes like terrorism, cybercrime, drug trafficking, corruption, and human trafficking. India's Interpol coordination is handled through the CBI and Bharat Pol portal. CBI is a National Center Bureau with respect to dealing with the Interpol. Remember this. I've taken this snippet from the website of Interpol itself. The color-coded notices enable countries to share and alerts and requests for information worldwide. Notices are international requests for cooperation or alerts allowing police in member countries to share critical crime-related information. Notices are issued by General Secretariat at the request of a member country's Interpol National Center Bureau, and this is CBI with respect to India, and are made available for all our member countries to consult our notice databases. Notices can also be issued at the request of International Criminal Tribunal, so not just the countries, but rather ICT, International Criminal Tribunals, and the International Criminal Court to seek persons wanted for committing crimes within their jurisdiction, notably genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. They can also be issued at the request of United Nations in relation to the implementation of sanctions by the Security Council. Most notices are for police use only and are not available to the public. However, an extract of the notice can be published on this website if the requesting country wishes to alert public or seek their help. All United Nations special notices are public. Types of notices, these are types: red notice, to seek the location and arrest of person wanted for prosecution or to serve a sentence. Yellow notice, to help locate missing persons, often minors, to help identify persons who are unable to identify themselves. Blue notice, to collect additional information about a person's identity, location, or activities. Black notice, to seek information on unidentified bodies, the dead bodies. Green notice, to provide warning about person's criminal activities where the person is considered to be possible threat to public safety. Orange notice, to warn of an event of a person or an object or a process representing a serious or imminent threat to public safety. Purple notice, to seek or provide information on modus operandi, how things basically operate, what is the process, objects or devices, concealment methods. Silver notice, to identify and trace the criminal assets. These are the notices. You can see we have red notice, we have yellow notice, we have blue notice, black notice, green notice, orange notice, purple, and silver notice. We also had a question this year's prelims, which talked about various notices: silver notice, blue notice, black notice, and green notice. Give me the answer in the comments. Very, very important topic, right? Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, this is about the National Investigation Agency. The National Investigation Agency has filed charge sheet against 8 accused, including Pakistani gangster turned terrorist Shehzad Bhatti, in connection with a car bomb blast in Haryana's Ambala in January. Let's go through what NIA is all about. The National Investigation Agency is a federal, that is union, central counter-terrorism law enforcement agency in India. It is a thoroughly professional investigative agency that matches the best international standards, has extensive powers to investigate terror activities in any part of India, register a case, and arrest people without the permission of the state government. That is not true with the CBI. Over there, the consent is required. We'll see the differences. The NIA is a statutory body based on the law, established under the NIA Act of 2008 and functions under the Ministry of Home Affairs. The ministry is Home Affairs. It was established in the aftermath of 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks. CBI comes under the Ministry of Personnel, and the NIA is under Ministry of Home Affairs, which expose the limitations of existing intelligence agencies to prevent and fight such attacks. The major objectives of NIA are in-depth professional investigation of scheduled offences using the latest scientific methods, building a database of all terrorist-related information, and assisting the states and other investigative agencies in the investigation of terrorist cases. Then we have statutory provisions. It was established under the NIA Act of 2008. Investigation of scheduled offences. What are the scheduled offences? On a receipt of a report from the state government, if the central government thinks that the offence is a fit case to be investigated by the agency, it shall direct the agency to investigate the offence. The central government may, without the report from the state, suo motu, on its own, direct the agency to investigate the said offence. So either on the request of the state government or also on suo motu basis. It has both the options. Power to investigate the connected offences. While investigating any scheduled offences, those offences which are mentioned in the schedule of the Act, the agency may also investigate any other connected offence with which the accused has committed. State government to extend the assistance to NIA. The state government shall extend all assistance and cooperation to the agency for the investigation of the scheduled offences. Investigation of offences under the other acts. For prosecuting under the UAPA and certain other offences, the NIA has to take the sanction of the central government. Prosecution of the offences. When the investigation is complete, the cases are placed before the NIA Special Court, so it has its own structure. The schedule of the NIA Act has several other acts, for example, atomic energy, UAPA, anti-hijacking. Institutional framework. NIA provides for the creation of National Investigation Agency. To investigate, the Act provides for the creation of NIA. To investigate and prosecute offences specified in the schedule, NIA officers have the same powers as other police officers concerning the investigation. NIA comes under the jurisdiction of Ministry of Home Affairs. Special courts. The Act empowers the central and the state governments to establish special courts for the trial of scheduled offences. The appeal lies to the High Court of the concerned state. This is very important. Differences. NIA, it is a statutory agency under the NIA Act. It is not a statutory agency, however, it derives the power from Delhi Special Police Establishment Act of 1946. Functions under the jurisdiction of Ministry of Home Affairs. Functions under the jurisdiction of Ministry of Personnel, Public Grievance and Pensions. NIA investigates incidents of terrorist attacks, funding of terrorism and other terror-related crimes. CBI investigates crimes of corruption, economic offences and serious and organised crimes. Central government can order the NIA to investigate a scheduled offence in any state. The NIA has the power to probe the terror attacks in any part of the country without the permission of the state government. The central government can order the CBI to investigate a crime in any state, but only with the consent of the respective state government. The Supreme Court and the High Courts, however, can order CBI to investigate such a crime anywhere in the country without the consent of the state. Got it? Let's go to the last topic. Coming to the last topic of today's discussion has a mention of the Girnar Hills, where unfortunately an 11-year-old boy was mauled to death by a lion while climbing in the Girnar Hill with his family in Gujarat's Junagadh district in the early hours of Saturday, the officials have said. Now this is, you can see the Girnar Hills, Saurashtra region of Gujarat, and over here it's also the Junagadh district which we have. It's located in the Junagadh district of Gujarat. It spans the rugged terrain of Girnar Hills, which are a part of Saurashtra region. Girnar has a rich cultural and religious significance with Hindu and Jain temples. So we have the religious shrines of both these religious communities. Predominantly dry deciduous forest. Remember this because there can be a question and there can be a linkage with respect to the vegetation of this particular region. With species like teak, dhak, acacia and other drought-resistant plants, the sanctuary supports a mix of dense forest, open scrub and grassland best suited for lions. It is filled with abundant wildlife including Asiatic lions, spotted deers, sambar, chausinghas, chinkaras, leopards, Indian golden jackals, and around 300 species of birds, which include both resident and migratory. So we have many of the migratory birds also coming here. It serves as an extension of the Gir National Park's lion population, an extension of Gir National Park's lion population. So remember this, can be asked in the prelims. That's all for today's discussion. I hope you really liked it. All the very best from my side. Take care of yourself.